Good evening and welcome to Tinkering with Edkelar. This episode is part 2 of, hope 3 in my tractor oil change series. As a note, I arranged the video per topic, not strictly chronological like my other videos so far. So if the continuity is off, that's why. After some initial pressure washer action, it was clear. The grease would not come off that way. Wire brush and scraping was the very minimum, followed by engine cleaner. In order to paint the parts, I need them to be clean, especially clean of oil residue, and since this tractor is running on different oils and loads of grease, that proved to be quite a challenge. The goal was remove at least any loose paint, treat any rust, and repaint with as many layers as required to get an even coat. Now the cast iron parts of the engine, which there are plenty, have a rust blocking layer of base paint. In order to repaint those, I first had to use some paint stripper and even more wire brush. Well, the rims of the front tires could use a bit of cleaning too. For all the non-cast iron stuff, I just scraped off the loose paint and removed the oil. For the manifold, I just had to remove a thin layer of rust, while the pistons required some more thorough cleaning. One of which turned out to have an annoying crack, so I had to order a replacement. Now to the paint job. Taping off any mating surfaces will save me from scraping away any paint later, at the risk of having to do some touch-ups where the mating surfaces don't line up exactly 1-to-1. The cast iron stuff receives a base coat of rust proofing. Yuck, brown! Oh well, it's going to get covered up anyway. The functional parts are grey. Whoops! The shade I got is way too light. That's what happens when you buy paint without reference. I filled up the grey bucket with black to darken it a bit more. Now it's at least halfway there. Again, the regular metal stuff will just receive a coat or two of matching paint without primer or removing the old paint. I did get a proper shade of red though. According to the paint shop I got it from, that's the official Steyr red. A far cry from what was left on my little tractor for sure. Nice and saturated again. I also painted the red parts of the engine in that new shade. Oil cap, dipstick, and, just for fun, the fan blades. The radiator and shroud take a high temperature black spray paint. While the manifold is painted with special high temperature paint to hopefully prevent any more rust and look spiffy. As a special idea, I thought it would be nice to paint all the fuel lines in black and to give everything water related a green coat, just to make it visually interesting and because I had that green paint around. Now for some components. The alternator came apart easy enough. Lots of dust from the brushes inside the sealed housing. I cleaned out the old grease from the ball bearings and applied new stuff. For the engine parts, I checked the diameter of the pistons, bearings and sleeves. All on the edge, but still within tolerance according to my repair manual, so I leave in what doesn't need to come out. The dashboard has a bar of indicator lights. These are colored pieces of plastic in front of a light bulb. The red ones have lost their color and icon over time. Battery and oil pressure indicator look almost the same by now. I decided to try some of my transparent model paint and also tried to repaint the icons. Not perfect, but recognizable. A quick coat of black paint to cover up all the scratches and the dash looks like new. But now all the instruments look like crap by comparison. A bit of aluminium foil to brush up the chrome. And now I can see how dirty the glass is on the inside. It never ends. After cleaning the glass, I took the opportunity to repaint the tractometer needle too. It was supposed to be yellow, not white. Assembly went mostly okay. I cut out a new set of rubber gaskets for the disintegrated ones and applied a new buffer ring, which was a nightmare to get in between the instruments and the hole in the dash. Took me about 2 hours just for that part. for lack of a better term, key switch also needed some cleaning. The dust and water cover disintegrated over time. A rubber plug made for some good substitute, even though I had to resort to glue to get it mounted. Testing out the contacts and switch positions, looking good. The indicator and horn switch was missing the cover for as long as I can remember. I used OpenSCAD and my 3D printer to fabricate a new one. The remnants of the raft make for a nice grippy surface even. I also replaced the old power outlet with a more common new style that required a slightly larger hole. Oh, and I finally mounted a proper push button for the windshield washer motor I added 20 years ago. The starter was one of the heavier pieces of equipment. I took it apart, reapplied grease and cleaned out a load of dust from the brushes, just like the alternator. Other than the dust and dirt, this went over without any hitch. The sprocket looks a bit worn, but still serviceable, and everything else looks almost brand new once cleaned. The cylinder head was not making things easy either. Two of the injectors were only moving after quite some time wiggling them around, and the old head gasket left quite an impression on the mating surface. I was so tempted to use a wire brush, but I know slightly better than that. The old crankshaft gasket was rather brittle. I'm glad I got a replacement set for those. Last piece to come off for paint, the windshield. And here we have a wiper motor. It just has one switch for on and off. No speed control or other fancy stuff. It also stops wherever it is when you turn it off. Pretty basic, but like everything else, packed full with grease. And a broken tooth on the output gear. Whoops. But since the output shaft is not supposed to make a whole rotation anyway, this should be tolerable. Finally, a component that has a good part count for some knolling. Assembled, greased up, testing. Yay, it works! Now for some fresh paint. The original was silvery, so I applied some chrome effect paint. I did not want to tackle the front loader assembly at this time, but it seems that the hoses are, well, hosed. Well, might as well remove the hydraulic cylinders and give the assembly a paint job as well. That one pin did not want to move without a fight, and since the tractor is still propped up somewhat shady, I did not want to whack it with a hammer. And that's it for this time. There should be one part left in this mini-series, which is the assembly. I hope I have all the parts soon and can commence, or I'll have a hard time recalling which part goes where. Well, maybe not. But I hope you had fun watching. See you next time! Took it apart, reapplied grease, and a far cry from